Bounty hunters. We don't need that scum.
I'll take on any job for the right price.
You are free to use any methods necessary, but I want them alive. No disintegrations.
As you wish.
Captain Catherine.
He's all yours, bounty hunter.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
Welcome in to the Carbonite Chronicles, presented by the Hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century. This podcast is dedicated to reviewing the Disney Plus mega release, The Mandalorian. My name is Matt.
I'm Jared.
And I'm Mike.
Chapter 8, Redemption. Whew,
Man.
season finale.
As if this show needed redemption. I mean, come on, am I right?
What?
Well, I think before we get started, we should warn everybody.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's your cue. Duh! Okay.
That's
now,
right,
they've been
spoiler
warned.
alert, everybody.
Spoiler alert.
The entire episode is being spoiled. So if you don't want to listen, you don't want to be spoiled, you're listening to the wrong podcast.
Absolutely. Oh, man.
Man, where do you
Can't
even
believe
begin?
it. Can't believe
Besides the
it's-
beginning.
Can't believe it's over.
I know, it
Dang
was too
it.
quick.
We hardly knew the...
No, but you know what? Actually, we got to know him a lot better in this episode.
Yeah.
But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start breaking it down. Tail of the tape, Matt. Let's get started.
I loved how they started this episode. I thought the banter between the two biker troopers was my favorite part of the... I mean, there's a lot of favorite parts, but it was definitely one of my favorites of the show.
Yeah, I think Mike texted me, or he texted both of us going, oh man, this opening scene.
It was great.
These troopers, at the beginning of the episode, first of all, the episode's directed by Taika Waititi. And that's very clear in this first scene.
Yeah, there's great comedy going back and forth.
And you know what? If he had pushed it just a little further, I think you're into like Naked Gun parody. But they pushed it right up to the line.
Yeah.
And then they didn't go any further, which was good because it was funny.
Yeah, it
Well,
was
I think
clever.
they stayed within the context of the story. It wasn't like they broke the... Was it the fourth wall? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Like they weren't looking at the camera winking at you or anything like that.
He did the same thing with Ragnarok, too. Like, it was a lot more whimsical and kind of ridiculous than previous installments, but it was all stuff that was kind of true to the universe that he was telling the story in.
Right.
So, but yeah, this conversation, and of course it's something that's, you know, the Stormtrooper banter is something that's been speculated about since, you know, A New Hope came out.
Right.
Just this, oh, well, you know, he just killed a bunch of his men. Maybe we should just hang out. I don't know.
I liked it when they were trying to do target practice on that can or whatever that was.
Yeah. Just
Nobody
kept
can hit it. They're
They just
checking their
keep-
guns if something's wrong.
He
Hitting
shook
the
it and it
sand.
rattled like a paint can.
And you know, they punched the Baby Yoda bag a couple of times. Which
Well,
was...
that made him unlikable so that when what happens to him, you don't feel
Yes.
sorry for him.
Yes. And what happens is IG-11 is on the scene.
He steps into frame.
And
Yeah, it's
he
like an old gunslinger stepping in an old Western.
and he tells him to cut it out, and they try to shoot him unsuccessfully, of course.
And instead of shooting him, he decides to beat them to death.
Yes.
Yes,
And
he does.
he breaks that guy's forearm in about 8 places. And then proceeds to use the other trooper as a battering ram into his own speeder bike.
Man, watching the IG robot move in all its weird little movements and gizmos and the way its head turns, it's just such a neat effect. It's such a cool robot.
And it does. He looked kind of like a little fragile almost. Like you could see him. They did a great job animating him because you can see him sort of wobble. You know what I'm saying? A little bit as he moves. So it's
of course Taika voicing him is perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. So IG-11 finishes off the biker scouts and puts young Baby Yoda into his pack, and they proceed into town. And Baby
Yoda to him.
Yes, and he goes, "I'm sorry you had to see that."
Even he acknowledges that what he did was pretty brutal.
I'm sorry you had to see that. And so Baby Yoda, he seems to be enjoying the ride back into town. He's all smiles.
Oh, sure. He's just got his head bashed in a few times. Now he's
like,
great.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Well, he knows what's coming for those other stormtroopers after what he saw happen.
Oh, boy. And then we cut back to the scene in the courtyard there with Moff Gideon and his legion of troopers. They start to set up an old Kenner toy, keeping with the theme of the troop transport from last week. We have the E-Web Blaster, which was a toy that was sold in the...
It's an Empire Strikes Back toy,
it was an
right?
Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, but I don't know why I just associate it with the toy, but I remember that
associated with the movie.
Oh, okay. Well, that's because you're 75 years old and you were an adult when you saw Empire Strikes Back.
That makes sense.
So
no,
I associate.
Moff Gideon had great backstory on that weapon too.
Yes,
as far as the universe went.
Yeah, he broke it down. He was like a Wikipedia entry. He was like, "Oh yes,
he was great for exposition." This guy,
yeah, it's like Moff exposition.
As you can see here, we are assembling an E-Web Blaster. He's like,
the only thing missing was...
If you would like to ask Republican shock trooper Kerrison Thea Dune about it, she'll tell you how we disintegrated all our people falling.
Only thing missing was Charlie Pace next to him going, "Dark magic, cloning,
the Sith."
It was a very drawn out, deliberate kind of threat, and it did a good job building up tension in that that sequence.
He also gave a name for the Mandalorian.
He has a name.
Is that the first time we heard his name?
It is. Yes. Din Djarin. Din Djarin.
Yeah, we learned a lot about old Din in this episode.
And so we get a little brief bio on. We found out where Kara's from.
Mm-hmm.
And
Alderaan, yes.
And probably why she hates the Empire as much as she does.
That's right. We also learned that Greef Karga is a disgraced magistrate.
Yes.
Which means maybe, I guess, he was an imperial magistrate in some planet that just
it's
washed
possible.
out.
Yeah. Yes.
And of course, Din, we learned, wasn't truly, even though we theorized and we kind of figured this out already, he wasn't born a Mandalorian.
No. He was a foundling, and he adopted their creed. I thought it odd they said the word creed like twice in that scene, and they didn't cut back to Apollo Greef.
Apollo Greef.
Maybe they figured it was a little on the nose.
Yeah, I know.
Probably. But something happened in that scene. I didn't pick up on it. Jared on the chain earlier was talking about it. What did we find out in terms of that rescue when he was a little child, a foundling?
Well, he was rescued by members of the Death Watch Mandalorians who were featured heavily in the Clone Wars TV series. This was the Pre Vizsla and his people. Pre Vizsla, played by Jon Favreau. So this was a nice little callback to the Clone Wars. These people had the Death Watch signet on their arms. And it was another cool scene with a bunch of Mandalorians jumping in and gunning down some battle droids and
flying around all over the place.
I liked it how the takeoff position when he had young Din in his arms was the same one they were using in the Clone Wars cartoon, like the legs and all
with
that
the,
stuff. Like
yeah,
they
where
made.
the leg has to bend at the knee.
Yeah,
That was a nice touch. But
Great
that,
scenes.
That is that's a little flashback we get when the Mandalorian's kind of explaining his history.
Yeah, and the Mandalorian knows who this Moff is as Moff Gideon, and he names him, which surprises Cara Dune because she was under the impression that he was executed for war crimes.
Yes,
However,
he survived.
it seems that Moff Gideon was, during the Empire's reign, either responsible for or in charge of the Mandalorian slaughter.
That could be, because the Mandalorian
Mandalore.
slaughter is kind of a that's a piece of history we haven't seen played out yet. When we left them in Rebels,
They were rebelling against the Empire.
correct, and Bo-Katan was in charge of them.
Right.
She was actually, thank you to the article you forwarded earlier today. She was in charge of the Mandalorians and was the last one to have a particular piece of hardware we'll be talking about later. So I get the impression that Moff Gideon, he went in and took care of all that.
They were not successful.
The Mandalorians were not.
No, they did not win.
So Moff Gideon is offering them kind of a it's not really a discussion. It's more of he's dictating terms to them as they're trapped. And he could annihilate them at any point, but he kind of wants them to be alive because he needs to find Baby Yoda, which he, I think, has already figured is not with them.
That confused me a little bit because the scout troopers had him. So, did they... I don't know. He sent them for him, and even when the episode ended, he's like, I already have it.
Yeah, because he's just out there giving speeches. And I think maybe people are afraid to talk because he'll kill them.
And I'm guessing that that the client earlier in the previous episode, Herzog, was an officer because they did refer that he killed it. He just killed an officer.
He just killed an officer. Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's who they referred to, or he was just executing an officer that got out of line as he's giving his speech, which we didn't see. But anyways, I like every time that Moff Gideon opens his mouth, I'm enjoying everything he says, everything he does. He's the exact kind of Imperial character I want in this show, and I'm so glad that there's an Imperial presence, that they didn't just erase the Empire 5 years after it ended in Jedi, that it's still, it's still heavy in some places in whatever incarnation it is. And Moff Gideon is a great character for me. I'm enjoying him tremendously.
Yeah, he definitely has a presence. He projects menace, but he's not, he's a very calm, collected person.
They're starting to panic inside. They try to exit through a sewer, but they can't get the grate open. And they realize that they're really trapped. When, all of a sudden, coming down the road...
in a fantastic sequence...
IG-11 taking out every trooper he goes by, speeding through with a speeder bike.
Yes, and this was another moment where I just sat there and enjoyed the spectacle. Like, this looked like something from a Star Wars movie. Once again.
Oh my God.
And, just driving through.
Spinning his body around and moving his arms in different ways. It was so cool to watch.
And using the speeder bike as a weapon once he dismounted it and just kind of threw it into a mass of troopers. So IG-11 hooks up with our heroes.
They kind of pull a last stand and rush out of the house, out of the building.
Yes. Followed by some more great action. And... the Mando gets shot in the head by Gideon.
Now, I'm not going to say I have a problem with this episode, but the only thing I felt was a little underwhelming was when the cannon was actually shot, the E-Web. Because although it was taking out stormtroopers, it wasn't quite as devastating as I expected it to be.
Well, I don't know.
Like, I kind of wanted to see, like, buildings being blown up behind it. And
here's the thing. He did pick it up off its base. So if you want to get really nerdy about it, it may, it may be a little more devastating if it's on its tripod. But who knows? But, I mean, I thought it was cool.
It was cool. I'm nitpicking.
Yeah, that's totally nitpicking. Don't ever mention that again. Because that was cool.
But yeah, so
He gets
the Mando is holding the cannon and taking out troopers. IG-11 is going crazy. Cara Dune has got a cool heavy blaster that she's taking out people with, and Greef is doing his best with 2 pistols.
Gideon decides to blow up the power pack.
Actually, that was a funny scene. Hold on, before you talk about him blowing it up. Gideon had actually left the scene. He said, "I'm going to give you till nightfall to decide this because I told you what's going to get you." And in that process, as he's describing the E-Web and what the damage does, and he goes through everyone's kind of biography inside the building, he then leaves. And then during the height of the action, he just kind of strolls back in, like looking around, like, "Oh,
yeah,
not too bad." It was actually kind of a funny scene.
Now, did he shoot him first, or did he blow up the power pack first?
Shot him first.
He shot him in the head.
Yes.
And I think there's even a dent in his helmet because of it now.
Once the explosion happens, they go back to where they were, right? Back inside?
Yeah.
And a flame trooper comes out. He's this really bad-looking dude with a giant flamethrower. This flame trooper is really cool looking. He's got the red highlights on his armor like a shock trooper. And he starts laying waste to this place. And in a very pivotal moment, the Baby Yoda once again holds out his arms and protects them and pushes the fireball back on the trooper, which is a cool little moment.
Right.
And
which also kind of goes to show that you should never be the flamethrower guy.
No, that's true.
Ever.
Yeah, but he probably lived. I don't know. You got to think his armor has some fireproofing on it.
I don't know.
Okay, well, he probably didn't. Stormtrooper armor is completely worthless anyway, so.
This just goes to show that in every episode of The Mandalorian, somebody has to get roasted. And he's not the only one, by the way, who gets roasted in this episode.
Yeah, there's
we'll
more.
Get to that.
So they do make their escape to the sewers, and IG-11 stays with a very injured Mando.
Apparently he's gravely injured from the exploding E-Web cannon.
So this was obviously an important moment in the show because to get treatment from IG-11, he has to remove his helmet. And he doesn't want to do that. He can't. Until he gets an assurance from IG-11. He hasn't taken his helmet off in front of a living person since he was basically a kid.
Right.
And so IG-11's like, I am not alive.
I am not living.
He takes the helmet off, and we get our first look at Pedro Pascal as the Mandalorian.
And you know that helmet
last time I saw this guy's face, the mountain was popping his eyes out.
Yeah, that's true. But it's interesting that from what I've read, this may have been the only episode where he was in the costume.
Yeah, I know. He's been
because
he's
John,
been ducking a lot.
John Wayne's grandson has been the stuntman who has been the primary actor in the costume for most of the show.
Well, see, I remember reading when they cast him, like, well after they'd been shooting. Like, we cast the Mandalorian. I'm like, well, you've been shooting for like 2 months.
Yes.
Did you just now get to his scenes?
Yeah, Bryce Dallas Howard said she did not meet Pedro Pascal because it was John Wayne's grandson was the guy in the suit for her episode, the entire episode.
Well, he had a pre-signed project. I think he was working on at the same time.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
he was going
obviously
back and forth to do this.
It's obvious, he's obviously voicing it, and that's a totally different thing. That's much easier to do. But they pull the helmet off, and he's
Darth
all
Vader.
A little bit, yeah. He's all bloody, and his nose is bleeding, and IG-11 makes a little joke. It was an attempt at levity to put you at ease.
His nursing program, the whole nurse protocol from IG-11 is great.
And I like the a touch to the continuity. Of course, the Bacta mist. He gets the Bacta mist sprayed all over his head, and he said that'll fix you up here in a few hours. You'll be good as new. So Bacta, of course, for those that don't know, is the soupy stuff that Luke was floating around in at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back after he was attacked by the Wampa. And
wasn't Finn in it also?
Yeah, Finn was in like a bacta suit, and Darth Vader was in a bacta tank in Rogue One. So it's bacta is kind of this catch-all healing solution in the Star Wars galaxy. So the Mando and IG-11 limp into the sewers, and they come across.
They're reunited.
They are reunited, and they come across kind of a grisly discovery. It's just a bunch of Mando helmets stacked up.
It's a Pilo Mando.
And we're presuming that these Mandalorians were killed after their little rebellion in Episode 3. That's what I took away from it. I mean,
yeah. And the Mandalorian, Mando, looks at Grief and questions him if he was.
They revealed where they were, so the Empire went to finish what it had started on their home planet.
I think it's fair to say that most Mandalorians are
I mean,
probably public enemy number one of the Empire.
Yeah, the imps came and got him because, Grief was like, oh, I didn't do this.
yeah, he's like, this wasn't bounty hunters. This was bounty hunters like credits. They're not zealots.
Right. And then we see what is her name? I call her the Forger.
It's
but I
the
don't know
Armorer. Her name is
the Armorer. Okay.
Yeah.
The Armorer. She survived.
Armorer.
Yes. And she is. She's been, I presume, melting down.
She's like a Mandalorian bag lady now. She's like carting around Mando parts.
She's melting down what's remaining, I guess, to, I don't know, do whatever she's going to do with it. She does exonerate Grief when the Mando is jumping all over him. She's like, nope, that wasn't him. It was the Empire.
And she seems to put old Mando on course for season 2. Is what she does.
Yes. They have a very interesting conversation, and one that harkens back to Legends mythology in the Star Wars expanded
Tales
universe.
from the Jedi comic books.
Yes, indeed. She actually pretty much recounts the events of Tales of the Jedi when a bunch of Jedi Knights fought the Mandalore thousands of years ago. That's considered Legends now, but apparently, since it's been mentioned in The Mandalorian, I guess you can assume that it's official history now of Star Wars.
Oh, the whole Legends official continuity is a big mess. It's like, I think it's at the point now where you just pick and choose.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing, I mean, they're painting in broad strokes as far as the history is concerned.
They have a lot of good stuff to cherry pick from, so they're cherry picking what they think is the best stuff. But what I think is cool about what he learned, about as far as the history goes, is that we're still learning that most common people in this universe don't really know what the Force is. They've probably never had experience or ever seen it being used. Most of them don't know Jedi, and for good reason. They've been gone for a generation almost. And those that are old enough to might not have encountered them if they weren't in the core systems, especially when they're out in these outer rim planets. They may never have seen a Jedi. So it's interesting to see how the Force, although familiar to us as fans, to these kind of characters, it's either they don't know about it, or if they have heard about it, it's really kind of like a myth about what it is. So I'm glad that the Force is that kind of fringe kind of knowledge in this. It's not like a commonplace kind of thing.
Especially this in this time when it is a kind of a chaotic time in this history. The Empire's gone, and New Republic doesn't seem to really have a firm grasp on much right now. So, right. But that was an interesting. He's like, so you want me to take this foundling back to a group of enemy sorcerers? Which was an interesting way to put it. But she's
right.
like, no, you don't put him through training. Don't do that. He needs to. He's small and he needs to go back to his people.
So he's a surrogate father now of Baby Yoda, according to Mandalorian code.
Yes, the Creed.
Well,
the Creed.
I think he always was. I think I guess she had to tell him like, no, this is what you're doing, even though that's pretty much what he was doing.
And the Armorer finally, after he kind of, through the story, and she realizes that Baby Yoda is first it was his quarry, and now it's his ward per se. That she then says, "You've earned your signet now. You can wear this. He's no longer an enemy. You two are what'd she say? A clan of two now."
Yes.
And she gives him his first official signet.
Yeah, pretty cool looking Mudhorn emblem.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like the Mudhorn.
So they slap that on his shoulder, and earlier in the show he gave, didn't he give IG-11 or Kara or somebody? He gave him that little mythosaur skull necklace. That he had.
When he thought he was dying.
Yes.
He asked her to look after him,
Yes.
the baby, instead to show that to when she found the other Mandalorians.
Right.
Yeah.
The armorer gave him one last thing besides his signet.
A rising phoenix.
Yes, the Rising Phoenix.
He got him a jetpack finally. He's wanted one of those.
I was
since
thrilled to see the
chapter
jetpack.
3. Yeah. That was cool. And you knew
I
it was
didn't
going
see the little peg that goes into the opening in his back. I was kind of confused
That's-
a little bit.
That's G.I. Joe you're thinking about. G.I. Joe had the open back peg.
But they have to get moving. The imps are in the sewers. They're looking for him. IG-11 already took out a couple during this conversation, and then they're being pursued. So they have to get going down to the lava river, which will then lead them to the lava flats, which would give them access to his ship.
We got to see the armorer beat the unholy crap out of
Well,
some
that's after they
stormtroopers.
leave the scene, and then
Yeah, they leave, and then they come upon the armorer, and they will not live to regret it.
She took like a huge chunk out of that one dude's
Oh,
face
his
helmet.
mask.
well,
Yes.
and like I said, true to form with this show, someone went into the armorer's furnace and completely melted away.
Yeah, he went head
I'd like to
first.
see what part she made out of that.
Yeah,
I mean, he just
What's
kept
this
going.
white
it, so-
piece? What's this white piece here?
It's hot enough to melt Beskar steel, so the stormtrooper
Oh.
just was liquefied
Yes.
instantly.
Is that a tooth?
that was pretty impressive. That was a great little sequence.
No, she's a formidable warrior, and she ruined every stormtrooper that came at her, and that's the last time we saw her. And I thought this next sequence with the lava boat was really funny and really clever. So there's this boat in this sewer lava river that's just been sitting there forever, and it looks like it's kind of like the lava has hardened around the boat and just kind of encrusted it in. So they managed to free the boat, but the driver of the boat is an old astromech unit that they call a taxi bot, which is what we saw kind of like at the taxi at the first episode, but it looked like it's all encrusted in rock and stone and it can't work. So they get on the boat and it starts to move, and then the unit comes alive. And for the first time, we see an astromech with legs and arms,
Yeah,
which I thought was really cool.
my daughter watched it with me today, and she's like, "That's unnatural."
It looks so strange.
It
It's
did.
so weird.
It did. It looked weird. It was really strange, but it was kind of cool. I mean, it kind of worked. I mean, you're talking about basically imagine if R2-D2 just sprouted like droid legs and arms and had a kind of a humanoid appearance, and that's what this droid looked like. And it was
Yeah, I loved it.
yeah. He wasn't around long though, unfortunately.
I was hoping he was going to be the next member of their team. I mean, every crew needs an astromech.
Yeah, I know. That would have been kind of cool, especially a weirdo astromech like that.
I kind of thought of like he was like a ferryman, taking him down the river Chiron or the river
There's
Styx.
Charon taking him across Styx.
Yeah, that's kind of true.
Don't pay the ferryman.
Oh boy. Okay. And so why did she blow his head off? I forgot.
Because he wouldn't
Because
stop.
he wouldn't stop
Oh,
the
yeah,
boat.
that's
but then the boat just kept moving, so it was a complete.
Yeah, it was- So
Did you hear the
they
little
see-
droid kind of whistling too while he was doing that, like like when R2 was doing something?
I didn't pick that up actually.
Yeah.
I watched it twice, and the second time I watched it with the closed captions on because there's some stuff that
Yes.
verbiage that you miss. So, But it said every time the droid was making noises, it harmonic like whistling from the droid or something like that.
Harmonic whistle.
So I think you're right. I think that's what he's doing. He's just whistling this tune as he went.
So,
But anyways, they see the end of the tunnel, and Mando, through his visor and his helmet, can see that there is an ambush waiting for them on the other side.
Now, this is one of those things that, like, if you watch the original Star Wars, when they go down the trash compactor, when they open the door to that trash compactor, there should have been, like, a bunch of stormtroopers out there waiting. Because there's, like, literally no, like, they should have been able to figure out where they went, like, in 3 seconds. So that's always been one of those kind of, like, logic things in Star Wars that you just kind of have to overlook. And it was kind of nice to see in this that the stormtroopers knew where they were going to come out.
yeah.
Right. IG-11 evaluates the situation and realizes that there is no scenario where they can get out alive and have the baby escape if IG-11 survives.
Correct.
Because they just don't have the firepower to handle this kind of ambush that's coming at them. So IG-11, luckily, has his secondary protocol, which is his manufacturer's protocol, still in place, which allows him to, if captured, as we learned in Episode 1, to self-destruct.
He steps off the boat into the lava and starts kind of trudging his way to the mouth of the little cave. And he blows all of them up in pretty spectacular
The end.
fashion.
They won.
Not quite. Not quite.
Was that the first time we saw in live action a thermal detonator go off?
I believe so.
Possibly.
When they first, when Bush, was that the name of the bounty hunter? Is that how you pronounce it? In Return of the Jedi?
Yeah, it was Boosh.
When she first pulled that thermal detonator out, you know what I thought it looked like?
What?
When my brother was little, he got a E.T. spaceship toy. And it was round and chrome. So whenever she pulled that thing out in her hand, I thought it looked like that E.T. spaceship toy.
You thought it was E.T. spaceship?
There you go.
That's good.
No, I thought it was. That's what it looked like. I knew that's what it wasn't, but you know,
I know.
that's
That's
what it looked
fine.
like to me.
Okay. Good to know. So IG-11 pulls out E.T.'s spaceship and blows up all the stormtroopers. And so they don't have much time to celebrate their good fortune, however, because a TIE fighter is approaching them quickly and starts firing on them. It's our old pal, Moff Gideon.
I thought it was kind of bold, considering he must have figured the Baby Yoda was with them to be firing at him, so...
Yes. I thought that was a pretty spectacular sequence. It sort of, in a little bit, reminded me of Force Awakens when the TIE fighters are chasing Finn and Rey at the beginning, you know? It's just it's just the whole TIE fighter and atmosphere strafing the ground and stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, it going behind like mountains and stuff, it was really a great sequence. It looked great. I mean, again, the money being put into this show is so, it's astronomical.
It looked like a movie. It looked real. So,
man, it looks good.
So the Rising Phoenix gets some use here. The jetpack comes out. Something, this is something we've never seen in Star Wars, really, live action for sure. He activates the jetpack and, lands on a TIE fighter, which was pretty spectacular. He had his little grappling hook, made his way up to the cockpit, planted some little detonators on the wing, and the TIE went down. With the TIE out of the way, and Moff Gideon, of course, dispatched, never to be seen again.
I noticed immediately when the ship went down, there was no explosion.
Yeah, there was no fireball.
It just kind of went...
Which is probably more realistic, actually.
Yeah,
but,
that's kind of
but I think, we just saw another TIE fighter crash very recently in Rise of Skywalker. And didn't Kylo's ship blow up? I think it
did blow up.
I think there was a fireball there. So, but he has the Force. He protected himself. The Mandalorian takes Baby Yoda and they part ways with Cara and Grief. And Grief says, "Hey, maybe I'll recruit you
Cara
to be a
decides
bounty
to stick
hunter."
around.
Yeah,
Stick around.
that's right. He's like, You
Well,
know,
he
Kara?
wants her to be an enforcer.
Yeah. Without a war to fight, Kara, the warrior might as well be dead. That's what he said to her. No, but so you get the impression maybe that Kara and Grief are going to be partners in some way, or she's going to work for him or something.
Yeah, Mando wasn't too hot with her leaving either.
Do their spin-off show, The Kooky Adventures of Kara and Grief.
So we get back to the ship. Baby Yoda's hanging out, and he's got the little mythosaur pendant, and the Mando is off on a quest to find Yoda's home world, which should be very interesting in the coming season.
Indeed. But that's not the last scene we see.
We see some Jawas, some dirty Jawas from the Tashi Station Bar and Grill.
God, it didn't take them long either.
No. They were there. I mean, you get they're like ants when you drop a piece of food at a picnic. They're just boom, they're there. And they start picking apart, and then I must admit, I thought of Matt right away when I saw the black saber come out of the TIE cockpit. As I recall, Matt, that black saber is one of your favorite weapons from the Clone Wars.
Oh, I loved it. Oh, that was great. Such a great looking lightsaber. I mean, it was one of the best lightsabers ever created in Star Wars.
The black saber in live action was really cool looking. I mean, that's kind of a tough visual to pull off, but it looks really neat.
Yeah, you're right. You know, this is the second time, though. This is the first time we've seen it, but the second time it's been referenced in live action Star Wars.
Yeah, the
do you know when the other time?
Yeah,
was?
Rogue One.
Right.
It's the name of a project in Rogue One that she's listing off, looking for the Death Star.
So Moff Gideon cuts himself out of the TIE fighter and he jumps up on top of the TIE fighter with his dark saber, and
He stands
that's it.
astride his fallen craft, revenge in his eyes. This is not the last we'll see of this Imperial.
But it says a lot about Moff Gideon. It says, during the Purge, he either recognized what that weapon was and kept it for himself. And this is going to be a sore spot for any Mandalorian that spots him with this. And this is obviously Mandalorians as a general creed, public enemy number one. So he has to be the most hated person to every Mandalorian that ever existed, especially now that he has the darksaber.
Yes.
I was hoping they would answer one more question.
What's that?
Who was at the end of the episode with
who we thought maybe was Boba Fett?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was Boba Fett.
I was really surprised they didn't circle back on that particular mystery. I had
Because it
made
couldn't have been
some
Moff
bold...
Gideon. What in the world would he be doing out in Tatooine?
You know what?
No.
I think it was Boba Fett. And if you think about what's going to happen, at least what we've been hinted at for season 2, the Mandalorian is going to be going off into some unknown regions, perhaps, to find this home planet of Yoda. And most likely there will be somebody tracking him down. And I'm hoping in the Slave
1.
In Slave 1, because Slave 1 should still be around. It wasn't, blown up on the sail barge. So I'm hoping that Boba Fett, who he has a history of working for the Imperials, will be tasked by Moff Gideon to track him down. So,
Yeah. I
I
think
don't know. I think it'd be more interesting if Boba Fett was like crazy, after being in the Sarlacc pit. The things
I don't think he's been
things
into
that
that
does to a
long.
man. You can't. I don't know if there's any going back.
He's like the Darth Maul of Mandalorians.
he's all unbalanced.
Jeez, I'd be in there for 5 minutes and I'd lose my mind.
Man, yeah.
I'm in a giant orifice in the desert.
To say nothing of, 1,000 years of pain and suffering.
But I'm sure we will be seeing Boba Fett in season 2.
Yes. But now that season 1 is in the books, every episode, give or take, has, just say on average, 40 minutes. Some are shorter, some are longer. But, that's like 320 minutes of live action Star Wars that's come out over the past couple of months. And
That's amazing.
That's almost, not quite, but almost as much as a trilogy of movies.
I mean, I felt like I just watched a movie over the past month and a half here.
As far as the live-action Star Wars goes, I don't think there's been this consistently good Star Wars since the original trilogy. I
agree.
It doesn't have the cringeworthy, terrible choices of some of the prequel acting, and it's a lot more consistent and cohesive than the sequel trilogy. And it's just, it doesn't have really anything to do with any characters that we know of. It's a completely new story in Star Wars. I think it shares the same rarefied air as the original trilogy.
I agree. I think this just goes to show that when you have the right people in charge of a project, you can get some really good stuff. And I think between Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, this is the right mix, and we're getting some really, really exciting Star Wars television out of it.
I can't wait. They've, today as we record this, Jon Favreau put out some pictures of some maquettes they're making for season 2. And, season 2 is well underway as far as filming goes now. But coming in fall of 2020, we're going to be getting a Gamorrean guard. At least we know that much.
Looks a lot trimmer than the Gamorreans are used to.
Maybe this Gamorrean guard is... He did keto or something. I don't know.
He looks a little closer to the original Macquarie.
Yes, which
I'm sure is
which
intentional.
doesn't surprise me at all with these guys. They have like the old sketchbooks open in their offices, going, "Hey, let's make this. We can make this now."
Well, doesn't Doug Chang work on the show?
He does. Who was a Macquarie disciple.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty much.
I'm really anxious for some. I hope there is a physical media release that has a lot of extra features on it, because I'd love to dig deeper into the making of this show.
The only thing about The Mandalorian that really bugged me is all the fan service.
Are you being serious?
Because, why would you service fans of this series? That doesn't make any sense.
I think I'd like to get.
I think it'd be better if you just crapped on their expectations. That's probably the way to go.
He's so bitter.
Don't worry,
so
man.
bitter.
With any luck, we'll have Ryan Johnson directing an episode next year. Mike, of course, was being sarcastic about the fan service. And if he's not, then, just get out of here. I got no time for this.
Now, this show has been fantastic, and as Star Wars fans, I really feel there's nothing more that I could have expected or wanted out of the show. It really gave me everything as a fan. And we can't wait for season 2. The Carbonite Chronicles will be back. We'll be, as soon as the first teasers come out for season 2, the Carbonite Chronicles will be back to talk about it.
Yes.
So thanks for listening. And leave us a review. We want to hear your feedback. And it helps if you share it out. So spread the word.
Keep watching the skies.
We have spoken.
I have spoken.
You know you can't live without this content, so subscribe to the Hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us here next time as we take you into the 25th century.